Thank you very much. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Bernanke, the equity participation rights, which were a central part of the AIG arrangement, were they punitive in nature?
Well, they're 80%.
Well, no, but was that a use specifically wanted to punish AIG?
Our terms included, besides 79.9%, an interest rate, which is currently over 11%, and essentially a super lien on most of the assets of the company. So I think that it's a very tough deal that we struck. We did that because we wanted to protect the taxpayer. At the same time, we were concerned about the implications for the markets of the failure of this large company. I'd like to say I think we do have a serious too-big-to-fail problem in this economy. It's much worse than we thought it was coming into this crisis, and as we go forward, we need to develop methodologies to reduce that too-big-to-fail issue, and this is what happened.
Why wouldn't equity participation rights work in this arrangement to protect the taxpayers and reimburse the taxpayers, particularly with the difficult problems of pricing these securities, the different arrangements that Secretary Paulson suggested might be undertaken, and the need really to assure the public that this is not a one-way salvation for Wall Street at the expense of taxpayers?
The reason is that when we dealt with Bear Stearns or AIG or Fannie and Freddie, those were situations where the company was about to fail, had no option. We came in to prevent failure for systemic reasons. In those situations, it's appropriate to knock the share values down low as to reduce the moral hazard for subsequent events. But if we're dealing with going concerns, companies that can, are still operating and have reasonable business prospects, we don't want to threaten the companies with reducing their share values to zero, because that will obviously...
Well, no one was suggesting that you reduce their share value to zero, but I think in that context of going companies, this program will be strictly voluntary. There'll have to be a business judgment made by the managers of that company, whether it is worth it to them to enter into this transaction to rid their balance sheets of toxic assets. Right now, the price of admission is zero. I think it's not inconceivable, inappropriate to demand in that calculation they recognize if they benefit from this transaction in the future, and that's the notion of a warrant or a participation in the future, that they will share that benefits with the taxpayers who have made the benefits possible.
Well, we just would note that if you leave the risk on the balance sheet in that way, you really haven't accomplished anything.
Well, if a company is willing to accept those risks, manage those risks themselves, they don't need a bailout. If they're unwilling to do that or cannot do that, then they should pay for it, at least in a contingent fashion, which is the essence of this whole issue of participation rights or warrants or whatever you'd like to call it.
Approach it this way. This is a huge...
I'll turn that on a minute so we can hear you,
Okay.
Secretary.
Approach it this way. This is, when you talk about what the companies need, this is not about the companies. This is about the American people. We need something to work. And for something to work here, rather than going to a group of troubled institutions that need to sell and saying, here we are, sell to us, here's all the things we want from you in turn for that, we need and we want for this to work a broad range of institutions to willingly, not that we have to go and sign them up, but to willingly participate, because we're trying to find value and we're trying to get markets working, because we don't want to have to deal with a failure. RTC is about failure. Putting capital in institutions is about failure. This is about success.
Secretary, you're suggesting that these very brilliant financial people who are running these companies would risk the failure of their enterprise by not participating in this function because now we've imposed a contingent reimbursement to taxpayers.
Let me just say one more time. I am as frustrated as you are about compensation.
This is not about compensation, Mr. Secretary. This is not about what they get paid. This is about when they do well, and if they don't do well, the value of these warrants are not zero.
Here's what I'm saying, and we will, that if this, when we protect the taxpayer, the right way is to have the program work and have the assets appreciate when the economy appreciates. I'm saying that the model you are looking at is a model where we'd go to people that absolutely need to sell, and say, if you want to sell, give us something. The model we're looking at is, and what we believe it takes to be successful here, is to go to a broad group of institutions and a very, very wide range of institutions that own these assets and have them participate. And if we deal with selectively, or as we deal with situations where there's serious trouble, to use a different approach. But anyway, I appreciate your comments.
Mr. Secretary, one other way to describe what you just said is we go to some institutions that don't need help and we give them help for free. But let me change the subject if I may, and I'm indulging in the